Room 72. Hope you had a great weekend. If you missed part of the story, I did record Saturday and Sunday, so go back on holes 4 and holes 5 for the last couple chapters. I just want to say that hopefully you guys are enjoying yourselves and getting some reading done, some good sleep, helping around the house and that kind of stuff. I did also post a cute video of a French Bulldog puppy. The link is on day 5, so please watch it and comment on today's video. Let me know what you thought of the dog, what your favorite kind of dog is, and any other interesting stuff, because I miss you guys and I want to hear what you've been doing and how you are. Okay, so here we go. Here's chapter 42. In chapter 41, Zero talked about how he lived with his mom when they were homeless, how they had to steal just for what they needed, and he also talked about, he admitted stealing Clyde Livingston's shoes, thinking they were old, they were used, they were smelly, it wasn't a big deal. He just literally put them on his feet and walked out of the homeless shelter. No one caught him, but then, well, tune in yesterday and you'll get more details about that. Anyways, we're starting today, chapter 42. Zero became strong enough to help dig the hole. When he finished, it was over 6 feet deep. He filled the bottom with rocks to help separate the water from the dirt. He was still the best hole digger around. "That's the last hole I will ever dig," he declared, throwing down the shovel. Stanley smiled. He wished it were true, but he knew they had no choice but to eventually return to Camp Greenlake. They couldn't live on onions forever, or could they? They had been completely around Big Thumb. It was like a giant sundial. They followed the shade. They were able to see out in all directions. There was no place to go. The mountain was surrounded by desert. Zero stared at Big Thumb. "It must have a hole in it," he said, "filled with water." "You think?" "Where else could the water be coming from?" Zero asked. "Water doesn't run uphill." Ding, 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 or does it? Stanley bit into an onion. It didn't burn his eyes or nose, and in fact, he no longer noticed a particularly strong taste. He remembered when he had first carried Zero up the hill, how the air had smelled bitter. It was the smell of thousands of onions growing and rotting and sprouting. Now he didn't smell a thing. "How many onions do you think we've eaten?" he asked. Zero shrugged. "I don't even know how long we've been here." "I'd say about a week," said Stanley, "and we probably each eat about 20 onions a day. So that's 280 onions," said Zero. Stanley smiled. "I bet we really stink." 2 nights later, Stanley lay awake, staring up at the star-filled sky. He was too happy to fall asleep. He knew he had no reason to be happy. He had heard or read somewhere that right before a person freezes to death, he suddenly feels nice and warm. He wondered if perhaps he was experiencing something like that. It occurred to him that he couldn't remember the last time he felt happiness. It wasn't just being sent to Camp Greenlake that had made his life miserable. Before that, he'd been unhappy at school, where he had no friends, and bullies like Derek Dunn picked on him. No one liked him, and the truth was, he didn't especially like himself. He liked himself now. He wondered if he was delirious. Why do you think Stanley likes himself now? Make a comment in the comment section. How come he's happy now? I'm Big Thumb with Zero. What's changed that's make him happy? How has he changed as a person? Comment below. He looked over at Zero sleeping near him. Zero's face was lit in the starlight, and there was a flower petal in front of his nose that moved back and forth as he breathed. It reminded Stanley of something out of a cartoon. Zero breathed in, and the petal was drawn up, almost touching his nose. Zero breathed out, and the petal moved toward his chin. It stayed on Zero's face for an amazingly long time before fluttering off to the side. Stanley considered placing it back in front of Zero's nose, but it wouldn't be the same. It seemed like Zero had lived at Camp Greenlake forever, But as Stanley thought about it now, he realized that Zero must have gotten there no more than a month or two before him. Zero was actually arrested a day later, but Stanley's trial kept getting delayed because of baseball. He remembered what Zero had said a few days before. If Zero had just kept those shoes, then neither of them would be here right now. As Stanley stared at the glittering night sky, he thought there was no place he would rather be. He was glad Zero put the shoes on the parked car. He was glad they fell from the overpass and hit him on the head. When the shoes first fell from the sky, he remembered thinking that destiny had struck him. Now he thought so again. It was more than a coincidence. It had to be destiny. Maybe they wouldn't have to return to Camp Greenlake, he thought. Maybe they could make it past the camp, then follow the dirt road back to civilization. They could fill the sack with onions and the 3 jars with water. Andy had his canteen as well. They could refill their jars and canteen at the camp, maybe sneak into the kitchen and get some food. He doubted any counselors were still on guard. Everyone had to think they were dead. Buzzard food. It would mean living the rest of his life as a fugitive. A fugitive is a criminal that has escaped the police. The police would always be after him. At least he could call his parents and tell them he was still alive, but he couldn't go visit them in case the police were watching the apartment. Although, if everyone thought he was dead, they wouldn't bother to watch the apartment. He would have to somehow get a new identity. Now I'm really thinking crazy, he thought. And he is kind of crazy, because really, what was his crime that he thinks he has to be a fugitive from the law? Stealing a water truck to save a friend? I don't think that he would go to jail for that. He wondered if a crazy person wonders if he's crazy. But even as he thought this, an even crazier idea kept popping into his head. He knew it was too crazy to even consider. Still, if he was going to be a fugitive for the rest of his life, it would help to have some money. Perhaps a treasure chest full of money. You're crazy, he told himself. Besides, just because he found a lipstick container with KB on it, that didn't mean there was treasure buried there. It was crazy. It was all part of his crazy feeling of happiness. Or maybe it was destiny. He reached over and shook Zero's arm. "Hey, Zero," he whispered. "Huh?" Zero muttered. "Zero, wake up." "What?" Zero raised up his head. "What is it?" "You want to dig one more hole?" Stanley asked him. That's chapter 42. Let's see what happens. Chapter 43. Comment below. Just say hi. I'll comment back to every comment I get. And I'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day and wash your hands.